start? Do you have a hello, welcome to everybody?
Welcome everybody. Thanks for coming tonight. We're going to talk about the BC Provincial Nominee Program. Tiffany and I work together, and we do a fair number of applications to the program, both on the skilled side and on business side. Most of what we're going to talk about tonight is going to be focused on the skilled side, but we are going to touch on some issues related to entrepreneurs as well. Just to give you a little bit of history, I've been a consultant for quite a long time, so I was already working in the field when the BC PNP was introduced, which I think was around 2001 or 2002. So I had a history of dealing with the program. I had clients who had applied and been approved over a couple of years. And then in 2003, I went to work for the BC PNP. I was the program manager, and then I became a director for immigration programs in the period from 2003 till the end of 2005. So I got to see it from that side. Now, the program at that time was quite a bit smaller than it is now. When I joined, there was only a few hundred nominations a year, and I think by the time I left, they were up to around 1,000 or so. And now, of course, they're nominating several thousand, 7,000 a year, I guess it is, somewhere in that range. So it's gotten quite a bit bigger, and since 2005, which is when I started Kenney Consulting, we've been dealing with the program as authorized representatives for our clients. So you know, my history with the program goes right back to the very beginning. And you know, I've dealt with the program from both sides, but primarily as a consultant, especially over the last decade and a bit. So we're going to try and give you an idea of what the program's all about. We're assuming that you have a basic knowledge. We're not going to go through all the categories and the criteria. What we're going to focus on more, I think, is how to best present a good case. What are the elements, and you know, what can make the difference between an approval and a rejection. So that's sort of what I wanted to say at the outset. Do you have anything else you want to add?
No, we're going to go through our agenda for tonight, and I just also wanted to point out that if at any point you want to make a comment or if you have any questions on anything that we're talking about, you don't have to wait until the question answer period. You can just put up your hand. Rhonda's going to pass along the mic, and then you can just ask it in the moment. I think we're really well set up for a roundtable discussion too. So, you know, share your tips, share your feedback if you don't think what we're talking about is accurate, or if you've experienced pushback from the PNP about anything that we're saying. So, you know, don't be shy. Okay, so the agenda, we're going to go through, well, Joe's already gone through an introduction, but we will talk about trends and updates to the program since the last education seminar, which was done by KPIC, which I was at in June. There's been quite a few changes since then. Okay, then we'll talk about the BC PNP Tech Pilot Project, a little bit more in depth about that. Strengthening weaker cases, going through procedural fairness issues, ethical considerations when you're taking on clients and when you're assessing their cases. I said this back in June when I was presenting up the KPIC one, but a PNP application is really all about advocating for your client. It's quite a hands-on type of application. It's not really like a work permit application where the client just has to give you a few select pieces of information and some documentation. You pack the package up and then you send it off to Bakerville or do it online. It's quite hands-on. You are expected to be involved in the process with your clients and with the employer. So at every step of the way, I try to advocate for both my client and the employer, especially on the application preparation front, and when we're submitting things to the PNP and answering inquiries that come after an application's already been submitted. Okay, so there were some updates on June 26, 2018, when they published the newest version of the program guide. Who has read that already, in like page to page? Yeah, kind of, right? So you just kind of flip through, and I just look at the updates and see, oh, okay, I need to flip to that page and take a read. But the PNP published a list of factors prohibiting nomination. This may come as common sense to most of us, but it actually did surprise me that PNP has never actually published it before in writing. So they've done that now. They've published a list of factors that prohibit nomination. They also updated the family income threshold, which is based on the 2017 LICO figures. They updated wording of express entry and semi-skilled job offers. And most importantly, I think they made significant updates to the BCPNP Tech Pilot project. So the PNP has finally put it down in writing that the following are factors which will prohibit them nominating an applicant. First of all, they will not nominate someone who is already prohibited from entering Canada. So if that person's already been removed from Canada or has an exclusion order against them, the PNP is not going to nominate that individual. The PNP, I think it's unlike a lot of other provincial and territorial nomination programs where they will still consider a candidate even if that person is not in Canada, is not currently in Canada, has never come to Canada before. They will still nominate that individual if that person meets the criteria for that specific program. So the PNP, however, will not nominate someone who is prohibited from entering Canada in the first place. They will also not nominate someone who is out of status. So if your client was previously on implied status, got refused because the PNP has not been, the profile has never received an invitation to apply, or if that person's employer is applying for an LMIA that has not been issued, the PNP is not going to nominate that person if that person is out of status. So if the client is out of status, the first thing you need to do is apply for restoration of visitor status at the very least. Or advise your client to leave Canada and go back home and wait for an invitation and a nomination from there. Someone who is working without authorization is obviously never going to get nominated. And someone who has an unresolved refugee claim or is under a removal order but has not been removed from Canada yet. I think this also applies to conditional removal orders, right? The ones who've been stayed.
I would think so, yeah.
Yeah, so a refugee claimant whose refugee claim is still in progress, has a work permit, but cannot go through the PNP.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They don't technically have status, so.
Right. Okay, so the new family income threshold, I don't think it's very far off from last year's LICO numbers, but most frequently we see a single individual with no spouse and no children. They're looking at a requirement of $22,804 per year in the Greater Vancouver District, and then the rest of BC, they only need $19,006 a year. But as we've experienced before, this needs to be a well-established number. So it can't just be purely based on the job offers from the supporting employer, especially in the entry-level semi-skilled categories. They need to have been making this amount of money appropriate for their family size the entire time that they've been working with the BC employer. So the PNP also reiterated in the current guide that this family income threshold is the total of the principal applicant's regular gross annual wage from the BC employer supporting the application, and a regular gross annual wage from their common law or spouse in BC. When they calculate family income, the BC PNP only considers regular gross annual wages, so they don't consider bonuses, commissions, profit sharing, tips, overtime, or housing allowance, or anything that's not considered base wage. Now, I have been advising my clients that if they're working in a sector where they would typically receive tips or gratuities or a bonus, that the employer should probably factor this in when they're offering a wage to the applicant. So I've had clients where they're working as a hairstylist, for example, and hairstylists in the market typically work on commission. So they work either with a higher hourly wage, or they work on commission of about 45 to 50%. So the employer would then take that percentage of commission and then kind of adjust it so that they come out with a regular base wage. So instead of a commission, the applicant would be getting a slightly higher base salary, which is proportionate to what someone of their skill and experience be getting anyway in the market. It's just that because